I just finished Netflix's Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, so get ready for the spoiler-free review. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW Reviews.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
Okay, so just a quick reminder, this will be spoiler-free. Every single review I ever do, I always try to keep things spoiler-free because I hate when people spoil stuff for me. And that's the rule I pretty much want to follow. So, the big thing is, if you just want to watch the first 10 seconds and then leave, is it worth watching? Is the show worth watching? Is it worth your time? The answer is yes. It is a very, very good, very well-made TV show. I highly recommend it. To me, it's a must-watch. Right now, it's a Netflix must-watch. Is it the best thing that they have on there? Might be. Nah, I don't think so. It's not the best thing, but it's really good. It's really, really good. And if you were a fan of the original, here's the thing. And this is the question that I've gotten the most from people who have never seen the original movie. They ask me, do I need to watch the movie before I watch the show? The answer is no. You do not need to watch the movie before you watch the show. Things are still pretty clear. However, I do recommend you watch the original movie, the original Jim Henson's movie, The Dark Crystal. It's also on Netflix, by the way. I recommend you watch that first because, A, it introduces you to the world of Thra pretty well. It's a pretty decent introduction to the world. Well, I mean, I guess it's the only introduction to the world. Anyway, so it's a good way to understand the world, how it works. But since the show is a prequel, and here's where the double-edged sword is. It's a prequel show. So on one hand, if you know what's going to happen, there's a lot of tension because you already kind of know the fate of certain characters. So you are aching to see how it's going to come to be, how certain events will unfold. So that's super interesting. And they managed to set up a world that is so interesting in itself that you actually care about the characters that you're seeing. So it's a really good build-up, and you already know there's going to be certain tragic ends. So it raises the stakes as a viewer. So I enjoy that. I enjoy that. I love tragedies, and I enjoy that certain amount of tension. However, it does spoil things. And as I said in the beginning of this video, I do hate spoilers. However, I do not feel like this is going to be, like watching the original movie is a spoiler because, well, this one is building upon it, and they already knew that the audience knows what's going to happen, and they played around with that. So they knew what the issue was going to be, and they made it so interesting that it doesn't really matter that you know, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Hopefully it does. I've always compared it with, for example, Halo Reach. Halo Reach, you already knew it was going to end badly, and still you wanted to go along for the ride. So the ride itself is worthy of being on. So if that's your concern, I recommend you watch the movie first. It'll make things better, right? Hopefully. Or if you want to just go in for the surprise, you want to go in dry, go in dry. Anyway, so the series is 10 episodes deep, and at least so far. And the first off, the cast is magnificent. It's got a stellar voice cast. You got Taron Egerton. You got Alicia Vikander, who honestly I had to research that one. You know, Alicia Vikander, the Academy Award winner. I'm pretty sure that's not how you say her name. Freaking Mark Hamill is in it. They got Andy Samberg. It's a really Helena Bonham Carter. It's a really interesting cast. They're really good. Lena Headey is in there from Game of Thrones. Also, the girl Natalie Dormer. I always like through her face. Anyway, so it's got a great cast. The voice is great. The puppets are great. The puppetry is out of this world. It's state-of-the-art puppetry. Their objective was to do the same thing as the original and take it a step further. They did it. And the CGI, the marriage of the puppetry and the CGI is flawless. The most impressive thing about the show is how visually beautiful it is. Thra looks beautiful. It's a living, breathing world that honestly, you don't really know what part is puppets and what part is not. And I think all of it is artificial, or at least most of it. And then you got CGI peppered in there. It's really good. It's a really good mix. It feels real. It feels like an actual living, breathing world. It's the colors are great. The costumes, the designs, the tools that they use are very clever. It's visually, the art department is bonkers. They're out of this world in how, well, literally out of this world, at how the quality of work that they portrayed on screen. It's fantastic. And let me just give you a quick example of like the marriage of CGI. well, a big part of the show for me, a lot of fun for me, was trying to figure out, is that CGI or was that puppetry? Did they do that with puppets or was it CGI? And I do that throughout the show. It's like, how did they do that? Was that CGI or was that a puppet? Like, one thing that really got me was when you're talking about the skeksis, their tongues, the tongues. I'm not sure if it was CGI. I think it's CGI, but it could have also been something else. So it's really good. And the emotions that they can get out of the puppets are incredible. Like, there's one particular character in the very first episode. I have issue with the Gelflings. Sometimes their faces, I feel like they're too fake. But I mean, the puppets. So I get it. It's you understood from the very first movie, from the beginning. You your eyes get used to it. You adjust to it. But there's one particular Gelfling called Deet. I'll get into her story in a minute. That they were cutting to reaction shots of her. That means that you're, as Joey said, the most important part of acting is reacting. Now, this does not mean acting again. It's Joey. Anyway, reacting, it's just basically a shot of somebody just, somebody says something very impressive, and then a cut to me. So her reaction shots are very subtle but good. You actually feel like, oh shit, this chick looks real. Well, not real, but like you could think it's almost CGI. It could have been, I don't know. But the point is, it's really good. The emotics. Point is, looks really good. Visually, great show. Is it Netflix's most beautiful show visually? I haven't seen Lost in Space yet. I've heard pretty good things, but honestly, I think it might be. In general, visually, I think it's the best show that they have. At least the one that I've seen. It's too pretty. The world's too pretty. It's a fantastic world, and by that I don't mean I mean like fantasy world. It's a great fantasy world, and it's filled with magics, brightness, darkness, colors. It's really good. So good over there. As far as the characters go, all the new characters. Well, the Gelflings are mostly all the new characters. You follow the story. You follow 3 characters. You follow Rian, Brea, and Deet. Now, they are all part of different clans of elves, and you learn that elves are kind of racist amongst each other. They don't like each other, which is very human. And so they all have kind of the same destination. They just arrive through it via different roads. And it's very interesting to see them go through their journeys separately, while at the same time they're trying to go the same way, because they're, again, different clans, different personalities, a lot of things, different customs, different tempers. And so these 3 Gelflings help us inspire a rebellion against the Skeksis, the evil Skeksis. And after they discover they've been corrupting the Crystal of Truth. Anyway, so Rian, who's voiced by Taron Egerton, he begins the story as a guard of the Crystal Castle, and he's a part of the Stonewood clan, who are basically warriors. His story is kind of darker, it's a little bit more tragic, and it's a little bit more about betrayal and vengeance. So the cool thing about this is the 3 stories are different enough that they keep things moving. They keep things in a very interesting rhythm. Everybody has a different rhythm. I'd say that his story is kind of the darkest in a way, because it starts off kind of tragic, it kind of rough, and they're all in a very bad spot. But I like his story. All the characters are likable, all of them. I know the main character from the original one was kind of annoying, but these so far, all of them have been very likable. Now the other 2 main characters are Brea. Brea is voiced by Anya Taylor-Joy. You might remember her from The Witch. And is she on the M. Night Shyamalan film? What's it? Split. I think she's on Split, too. Anyway, so she's a princess from the Vapra clan, who are basically nerds. Nerds, and they're like the leaders of all the elves. So, snotty. Up-nosed people. Like, they think they're better than you. Anyway, so they are the leaders of all the Gelflings, and she kind of, via her curiosity, gets into political issues. Now, that her part of the story is more the political side of it. So imagine more kind of a Game of Thrones-y type of vibe for her. It's really interesting. You get to see the politics of Thra, which is something that you hadn't seen before, which is great. Honestly, puppet policies, man. It's a trip. It's a trip. They're kind of way too innocent for their own good, which is great because it's got a cartoony innocence to it. The show, but it's very surrounded in darkness. So cartoony innocence surrounded in darkness is really cool. It's fun to watch. Now, the last character is Deet. Deet, she's voiced by Nathalie Emmanuel. You might remember her from Game of Thrones. She played Daenerys's... I don't remember her name right now. Anyway, her character was irrelevant. Missandei. She played Missandei on Game of Thrones. That was going to be embarrassing. Anyway, so she plays Missandei. And here she voices the character of Deet. And she's an innocent member of the Gotan clan, who are basically hippies who live underground. Like, they don't even see the sun. They're underground. They're in peace with nature, bruh. Everything's cool. Everything's chill down here. Vibes. But she started noticing that some of the creatures there are getting corrupted by something. And so she gets sent on a mission to prevent the darkening. So, those are the three main characters we follow. Plus, we get to see the Skeksis. The Skeksis are super interesting characters. You can see Chamberlain doing more Chamberlain things. Please. Please. Oh, that guy is such a weirdo. Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker voices the scientist, so he's actually a bigger role in this in the show than he was in the movie. In the movie, I think he's still a relevant character, but here's a little bit. They go in deep. You get to see how fucked up the Skeksis really are. It's great. Again, there's so many angles to the show, and you go through different paths, you follow different characters, and it's all building up to what you already know is going to be catastrophic. So it's a build up to a catastrophe, and it's great because it's a corruption of innocence that leads to catastrophe, shrouded in darkness. So, at the same time, they're trying to save truth. So, or the crystal of truth. Anyway, the purity. They're trying to regain purity through darkness. Overall, it's a really good show, and all three characters are very likable. Their stories are very interesting. The world is really fleshed out. It feels organic. It feels real. It's honestly, kudos to them. Kudos to Netflix. They did something phenomenal there. So the big concern that I had for this show was, as soon as I saw the trailer, I was like, ugh, puppet battles. How are they going to look? How are they going to make it not look stupid? They managed it. I mean, you can still tell it's puppets. It's not the same as watching a human fight, but it's got that cartoony charm of it. It's like, oh, that was so impressive for puppet. Like, it's you kind of get used to it. It's since you're in it for so long, you're in there for 10 hours. You're in Thra for 10 hours. You kind of get used to the movements of the puppets and you accept them. So your suspension of disbelief is not stretched too far when you see it. So it's actually, not only did they do a good job with it, it's not only was it not a concern overall, it's actually a very enjoyable part of the show, seeing them like, swords and stuff. It's really good. It's they like I said, Netflix did a great job. The puppetry is masterful and state of the art. Really good stuff. And trying to guess if it's CGI or puppetry is also part of the fun. Anyway, the show does take a few liberties with the story. Not that many, but a few. And it's not really that it changes the original story. It's more like, well, the original story left a blank, and I'm just going to throw stuff in there. I may be forcing it a little. Like, it might be like, forcing it a bit, but still, it doesn't break it. So, I mean, you left the blank there. I can write something in there. And I'm at points it might be jamming a little bit too much in, but never too much. It's still, you may have to do, the mental gymnastics that you have to do are not that much. It's very light mental gymnastics. So, that was good. Overall, honestly, I think the show was a great success. Like I said, it's a must-watch. I highly recommend it. It honors the original and actually improves upon the original. It makes it better. Watching one makes the other one better. The CGI and the puppetry, they were beautifully blended. It's an amazing mix of both. The story's very unique, and it doesn't pull any punches because it can't. We already know how this is going to end, so it can't pull any punches. It doesn't take pity on characters. It's very, very dark. in the best way possible. Well, it's because it has a sense of innocence, but in a very dark world. So I like the contrast there. And so overall, and the future for the show looks very bright because the world has a lot of potential. I mean, it's a fantasy world. You can do whatever the fuck you want with it. And you can just build upon what you already set up here, which would be great. But the biggest thing is that it created new characters that you care for. You actually care for these characters. You care about their story. You care about the world. You want to see how certain things came to be. So honestly, to me, and I put this on the review, so I'm just going to actually read it verbatim. To call Age of Resistance anything short of a triumph would be an understatement. So that's it. That's my take on Age of Resistance. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the review. Read it. You can check it out at reviewNation.net. Any comments, questions, or suggestions you have for me, you can always find me on Instagram at Dario the Show. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great weekend.